Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Mathias. Now, the artificial intelligence subsector is projected to contribute around $15.7 trillion to the global GDP by the year 2030. Now, with 6.6 trillion naira trillion dollars coming from the productivity and $9.1 trillion coming from consumption effect. Now, Africa is projected to gulp about 1.2 trillion from the total figure projected, and this is according to a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC, as we all know them as. Now, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South Africa are the leading top four within the startup investments, and they will all be battling against each other, to ensure that they attract the highest from the $1.2 trillion. On the show today, we'll be looking at the strategy Nigeria can adopt to put the ecosystem at the forefront of attracting the highest FDI from the projected $15.7 trillion. But let's first take a look at the social media trends in the past week.
Celebrated on October 11th, the International Day of the Girl Child is on a yearly basis commemorated. It focuses on renewed hope for the female gender to inspire equal opportunities. Important, and to also recognize the potential young girls hold in the world. With the theme, My Voice, Our Equal Future, organizers say it has become necessary to address the margin between boys and girls when it comes to education and overall cultural attitudes towards girls. Three frontline candidates of the presidential election have been in the frontline following allegations and claims of certificate forgery, as all three accused who have not used the names they currently use on their certificates they presented to INEC ahead of the election.
Well, there you go. Those were the trends. We're now being joined by a member of Scotland's Innovation Centre for Data and Artificial Intelligence. And also, he works for one of the most reputable central banks and critical financial institution in the world, Abel Abo. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you very much, Victor. Nice to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Nice to have you here as well. Staggering figures I just made mention of, in my introduction to the program. But you perhaps, have, a broader view of how things work abroad.
Yeah.
But what can we do locally to ensure that we position ourselves strategically?
Absolutely.
To attract much of these funds?
I think the word you use is really help strategically, and I think we need to start now because obviously the race has already started already, and I think for Nigeria in particular, for the continent, we need to start now. The figure is really a huge figure, and that money is available. And that's what AI can do, likely adding to the global GDP. So for Nigeria in particular, I believe that the key things we need to do, we need to recognize these opportunities out there. There are few people that do recognize that. So the decision makers need to know there's a 1.2 trillion out there, and potentially Nigeria can do about 30 to 40%. I've been researching and analyzing that for quite a while now. And I believe that there are four key things Nigeria need to do. First and foremost, we need to be strategic alliance with not just Nigeria, with all the African countries and across the world as well. The second thing we need to do, we need to start developing and growing our workforce. And what that means is that we need to give them digital skills, but we need to harness talents as well. Not just homegrown talent, but those from diaspora, we need to attract them back to Nigeria. The third thing we need to do, which I call 4PS, which is we need to start shaping some key policies, not just policies, but procedures and standards. The standards is really important because far too long, people always adopt standard that's being set somewhere, in EU or something like that. It doesn't work. Nigeria is quite unique. Africa is quite unique. So we have to be responsible.
So we need something peculiar.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think the standards is really important because if you go over to EU, they've got a standard as well, shaping artificial intelligence, because it's a new frontier. And I think finally, we've got to build our data management capability, but not just that, we also need to build our innovation capability as well. So those four things, according to the four pillars, we need to consider. There are some things that we need to consider in terms of foundational. I can mention one or two. It could be talent as well. It could be investment, but also we need to build our strong ecosystem. So that's data, information, technology, communication ecosystem as well.
Yeah.
And I think we need to build that, and we need to start now.
Yeah, I quite agree that we need to start now. But let me just put you back again. Let me just to do a drag back and take you back to one of the things, the pillars that you made mention of, which is, equipping, the workforce, or, those who are interested, with digital skills. I mean, the federal government has talked about, creating 1 million jobs. The Minister, of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy also ruled out his, let me put it this way, agenda. I don't want to call it a manifesto because we're not in campaign system. And he talked about, empowering 3 million Nigerians again with, what areas would you recommend that these jobs, are created in?
I think for me, more importantly, technology. I'll just give you a simple context here. So just before the 90s, the global stock exchange in the world was just about 20 trillion. So after 2020, just about 2000 and above, that's increased to about over 100 trillion. And for that jump, it's because of technology. So for example, New York Stock Exchange used to do about 1 billion transactions a day just before the 90s. And now they do about 5 billion a day. And they do that because of technology. So what we need to do is to start thinking about how we can build our people and equip them with technological skills. So McKinsey did a good report, which is the future of work. They said at this point in time, we need to ensure that there are 3 things that is important. One, higher cognitive skill. The fact that you've got cognitive is not good enough. You've got to have higher cognitive skill. You've got to have social and emotional intelligence as well. And finally, you've got to have technological skills. I know on this part of the world, we use the word digital a lot, but it's much more than that. It's understanding how technology works, how you can exploit it, how you can engage with, and how you can implement on it as well. So those are the areas that we need to build those expertise, and we need to do it quite quick.
Yeah. So I mean, we all talk about how, the government can't do this alone. So we need some form of private sector, participation in all of this.
That's correct.
So how can that happen? How can that collaboration, how can we follow it through in that perspective?
I think for me, it's all about the vision first. Because if you don't have your vision clear cut out, you're going to miss. So it's about getting someone to set the vision and make sure that we've got a full roadmap. Private sector is really important, but public sector is really important as well. Right. Let's not ignore them. And the last couple of days we've been talking about the strikes and all the rest of them. So it's not just fighting for public sector, but also for private sector as well. Yeah. We've got to be part of this together. So for me, it's about having that clear vision and having that clear roadmap. And it's really important for you to have people that are tested and tried, people that understand the space, people that have got international exposure, because this technology we're talking about, artificial intelligence, is not just a thing that you can go to some street and pick up and buy. You've got to have people that have been in that space operating, that knows how it works. And I think you need to bring those people together. But the vision is really, really important, because without a vision, trust me, you don't go anywhere with it.
The thing is, the vision, what we already have before us is what we would call the vision. So you look at, the strategies that the president intends to, use, to ensure that the ecosystem is not where it is now, it's taken to another level. And also, like I said earlier on, the Minister of Communications also has his own. So I'm sure they're going to put heads together. But again, with people from the private sector, people from the diaspora also coming into to chipping, there should be this robust stakeholder engagement, that would also help to shape, to put pressures, let me put it that way.
Absolutely.
On government to ensure that, these steps are taken. But ultimately, it's for Nigeria to be a powerhouse.
No,
especially
definitely.
in AI, where I've made mention of all of these, figures that I would really want to see Nigeria having a lion's share, so to speak, now from the African perspective. So in clear-cut terms, which sectors do you think we need to put forward, and what do you think we need to be implementing?
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
To ensure
that's a great question. I mean,
this investment.
Yeah, it's a great question. We need stakeholders, and the stakeholders, broadly speaking, are academia, industry. You've got young people as well, and you've got government as well. Not just government, you've got national government, and obviously outside the country as well. So those are broadly the stakeholders we need to have. When you come back to what you just mentioned as well, I think fundamentally, we've got to think about that how can we get to where we need to get to? And for me, Nigeria playing a role, not just being a powerhouse, but also a leader in the space. Those two parts matters a lot. And I can say that for free. And we starting now is really, really important. And starting now is really important because if we don't start now, so when I look at the minister mandate he's put out there, if you look at page 18 or so, he just mentioned about artificial intelligence. He's talking about 50,000 people he wants to train in that space. He's talking about below 50 to moving us above 50. Now, that's great, but that's not enough. So we need to start thinking about which areas we need to build, what I call the tech areas. So in my head, I've got 16 tech areas that can work in Nigeria, right? 16 of them. So agri-tech is one of them. Ed-tech is one of them. Fintech is one of them. Reg-tech is one of them. Clean tech is one of them. Green tech is one of them. Even sport tech is one of them as well.
There are quite a lot of techs out there.
Absolutely. And those tech obviously fit in across the sectors that we've got currently at the moment. And those are really what makes a difference. So for example, I give you an example. I was in the bank, one of the banks, and I spent 2 hours just to change my phone number. Right? That's not good enough. That's
a bank, Nigerian bank? Or
absolutely, a Nigerian bank. I spent 2 hours just to change my phone number. That's so costly of my time. So we need to enable the fintech to be better, to deliver for Nigerian people. And I think these are the practicalities we need to think about. So those 16 tech areas I've just mentioned, but also those various sectors is really important. And how can we do that? We can identify some really good use cases as well. Use cases are really important. So what are your problems? What are your top problems that you have? And we can use artificial intelligence to fix those problems for them as soon as possible.
I like the fact that, we're bringing all of this, real examples because they're quite abound out there. Like I said, there are a lot of techs out there. But one thing that we also always tend to forget is that when we look at things from a nationalistic approach, there is also the need for states to domesticate some of these approaches, especially policies and regulations. Just last year we celebrated the Nigerian Startup Act. There's also been other bills. But where do the states coming, in all of this? I would like you to respond to that, but let me just hold you there for a bit. We need to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll come back to you to respond on that. We'll take a quick break, and I'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us Abel Labo right here in the Abuja studio, and we're looking at getting Nigeria to become an AI, that's artificial intelligence, powerhouse in the world, in Africa, and so that it can benefit not only the GDP, but also the general populace, and of course, youth who are interested in technology and also obtaining skills and getting paid and being employed and also being employers of labor. So, Abel, let me come back to you now again. Just before I went on break, I was looking at the state's approach to the national policies and legislations that we currently have. Where do the states coming? How do they plug in to ensure that those that the federal government cannot reach, will be reached by them?
I mean, it's really important. I'm so delighted that they've got the Startups Act already, which some state at the moment, not all the state, is trying to domesticate. And I think I would encourage every state to do that because there's potential. The beautiful thing about technology is it's not just a natural resources that's buried in someone's backyard, and that's the only place you can find it. You can explore the opportunities as well. So I would encourage every state to first domesticate the Startup Act, but you don't need to stop there. So what you need to start thinking about is with your population at the moment, your tertiary institution, the people you're growing, their homegrown talent, what are they interested in? And I think the beautiful thing about artificial intelligence is it's not just one space. So you can do software, you can do hardware, you can do services as well. Artificial intelligence can enhance all this as well. So some states is pretty much around services that they deliver. They could be a tourism state, for example. They can use artificial intelligence to enhance that as well.
I would be thinking, how do you use AI to enhance tourism?
That's a lot. That's a lot because so think about you earlier when your intro you mentioned the productivity part and the consumer part. When people they do those two things. So you're either producing or you're consuming. So with the tourism part, obviously you're consuming tourism. you're going to hotels, you're consuming services as well, for your enjoyment or whatever that is. You can use artificial intelligence to ensure that that moves smoothly, so it's quite seamless. So when people come into your country or to your state, they get the service that they need. It could be information as well that they need at the right time quickly. It could be where to go to. It could be all the things that kind of give that whole holistic experience.
Yeah, so are we talking algorithms here? I mean, are we talking APIs that needs to be plugged in?
It's a combination of that. Okay. It's a combination of that. But fundamentally with artificial intelligence is data. Yeah. And one of the things we need to do well, that's why I mentioned that one of the pillars we need to focus on is data management capability. Yeah. Because if we can start exploiting our data for ourselves, which we generate a lot. So I'll give you a simple example. There's about 5 million Nigerians in Twitter, and they make the loudest noise as well. So for those people in Twitter, don't come for me, but that's true, because whenever Nigeria congregate, they create information, they create stuff. Yeah. So you can explore that as well. So certainly APIs and all the rest of them. But I think we need to start looking at how we're going to use our data. So from a state level, that's it. But some states, the agriculture. Yeah. Right? You can use artificial intelligence. Why? Because your seed as well, your how you manage disease and pest controls as well, and all the rest of them. You can use artificial intelligence to support farmers as well, to deliver food and products as well that you need to sell within Nigeria or you need to export as well. So that's all sorts you can use that for.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's good that you're harping on, the issue of data, us have been able to harness and explore and exploit our own data. I mean, not too long ago, the president also signed the Nigerian Data Protection Bill, into law, and we now have a commission that is supposed to be protecting our data. So, what role can they play in all of this? I
mean, they have a big role to play. I mean, obviously, the data protection is pretty much about people, but there are data that don't have to do with people, basically, and which we can also explore. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing. People use the word that data is the new oil. But that's true. But it's not just that. Data is the new infrastructure. You can build on data. So, the commission have a role to play, around consent as well, how people data have been managed, how people data has been shared, and all the rest of them. Certainly they do. And not just that as well, but other agencies as well in the space, they have a role to play.
Yeah. So again, speaking about peculiarity of the country, and also now, since we're talking about states, participation in all of this, like you said, we need to build applications or technology and all of that to fit our own peculiarity. Where do states coming in this as well? Because apart from the general Nigerian peculiarity, that we have a lot of ethnic groups in the country.
That's correct.
Exactly. So where do states coming in terms of trying to, build such peculiar, APIs and applications? Because should we see states now begin to have their own hubs and, centers and all of that?
I mean, for me, that's going to be a good thing. You're right, because people don't appreciate the diversity of Nigeria. Nigeria is way, way too diverse. And you've got to understand that if you want to deliver stuff. So when I think about the strategy for artificial intelligence for Nigeria, there are 3 key principles. 1, it has to be trustworthy. 2, it has to be ethical. The final piece, it has to be inclusive. Absolutely. Those 3 pieces for me matters. And trust me, if we can channel it that way, we'll definitely have so much friends rather than enemies as well. But more importantly for Nigeria, those 3 things would work, because from a state level, people can trust that the state is using their data properly, it's ethical as well, it's non-ethical, and finally, it's inclusive as well. Just a simple state, there's so much diversity within the state as well. So I think that is really, really important. But can we do it? Yes, we can. The reason is, China at the moment is running really crazy with artificial intelligence. America is doing the same as well. Just, the last couple of months ago, the United Kingdom has opened an office for artificial intelligence, and they've written a check of 100 million to a guy called Ian to help to run
$100 million or
£100 million to put team together for them to build their capability. And Google just put out a report about a few months ago that £400 million can be added to the UK GDP in the next 7 years. because of artificial intelligence. So what we're talking about is not just some fairy tale. We're talking about real thing. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about unlocking prosperity for Nigerians and for the continent as well. And I will encourage everybody to take this quite serious as well.
You know, I'm just thinking of, you know, the contribution this will make to Nigeria's GDP, honestly. Like, if we invest in the right places and we begin now and do all of that, I think it's going to be enormous. And I can't wait for that to happen. Hopefully with people like you giving advice and, you know, adding your voice to the conversation, hopefully the government would listen and, you know, implement all of this. Maybe perhaps even bring you in to come and implement some of this. I mean, like you said, those in the diaspora need to come back home. So maybe if you leave your in Scotland and come back.
No, that's quite generous.
Something might happen, but I have to say thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you. It's really good.
On the show and sharing your thoughts with us. It's been a pleasure again.
Thank you so much, Vijay, for having me. It's really good to meet you as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Same here as well. Yeah. Well, that's where we are. That's where we'll have to draw the curtains on this episode of the show. But as always, we'll leave you with the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias. Bye for now.
We kick off this week's most viewed videos with a decision by the Lagos State government to demolish the Jankara market and two others.
The Bombata market and the Jankara market is going to be ground zero, you know, and there's a full design of what.
So allow me, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to congratulate you.
It is followed in fourth with Vice President Kashim Shettima maintaining that this administration will return normalcy in the Northeast.
We are not in government to go to war with the National Assembly. We are here and march to.
Ashad Bola Ahmed, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's hand is by 8 million people. Shall all of us who are not part of that 8 million now say to ourselves?
Third spot is taken by a chieftain of the PDP, dropping his 2 cents on the certificate saga going on in the country.
Documents are flying about, some saying female, some writing male, some saying he came with the social.
What I wanted to seek and find was to answer a simple question. What does it take for Africans to be great?
In second is a charge to African youth to fight for and seize power.
I went and looked for the actual thing that I could prove here, the scientific thing that I could go, statistically, if you do these things, on a balance of probabilities, you will achieve whatever greatness is defined as.
When the American dollar as much as sneezes, the Naira goes into a coma. Why? 63 years after independence.
While topping the charts is a claim that Africans suffer because the electorate vote in the worst to lead.
We still believe that somebody else's currency is what must define us.